What's going on, folks? It is Dr. Remy LeBeau, and I'm coming at you once again from the X-Lair to provide you my very deep and insightful reaction to the latest episode of Legion. This was Legion Season 2, Episode 9, 10, 11. We have 2 episodes left. This was the third to last episode. Very much a bridge episode, kind of like Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. That kind of got us from all the action from the previous films to the final 2 films, where everything was, the final 2 films was essentially just a gigantic climax, right? So that's what I expect from the last 2 episodes. I expect a giant climax. This was the bridge. And this was very much a sort of fleshing out of a lot of what we saw at the end of last episode, and a lot of absence of David in the episode, which is interesting, right? The show is about David. It's called Legion, for God's sake. And by the way, they haven't even referred to him as Legion on the show, nor has anybody in any way like referenced that word, which is an interesting thing. I hadn't actually thought about that until now. Anyway, no David in this episode, and really no Sid either, because it turns out Sid was just a fragment of Melanie's imagination when we saw her, that I believe was manifested by the Shadow King, of course. And I think the episode ended pretty much where the last episode ended. So, again, we didn't really get anywhere, but we did kind of see a little bit of what David's plan is in action. Right? At the end of the last episode, partly we saw him release Lenny. And then we sort of got an idea of what she was going to do. And we sort of got an idea that Carrie and the girl that is in him, I forget her name, that they are going to play a role. And we saw that kind of play out here. David had basically given them psionic suggestions to do certain things. Carrie and the chick were instructed to grab a weapon from this like really sort of futuristic, arcane, I don't know, weapons locker. Just the weapons locker that the Shadow King took the weapon from to be able to convert David's sister's body into Lenny's body. Clearly, Division 3 has a lot of important tech that has yet to be explained and may never be explained, but is an interesting element of the show. And whatever weapon it is that David instructed them to get for ultimately Lenny, I'm sure will be something unconventional. Even though we saw her with a gun in a couple of flashes, I doubt it's going to be that simple. I doubt it's going to be a simple sort of gun that I'm going to assume is being aimed at the Shadow King, which is ultimately being aimed at Oliver. And so I don't know how it's going to play out, but what actually happened versus what will happen is clearly consistent with what we know the show to be, which is uncertain. We are never certain about what is actually happening versus what could be happening. And another interesting aspect of this episode is that we didn't really have an astral plane sequence. Everything was sort of like people having delusions about what they were seeing. We had a very nice exploration of Melanie's sort of experience over the last few weeks post the David return. Apparently, the season has been going on for about 13 days. And I had mentioned a couple of episodes prior that I felt that Melanie had been sidelined, and clearly here we see a bit of why she was sidelined. We see the fact that she was in fact in that pretty much hole, that mental hole that the Shadow King took advantage of. And he actually was in her head long before these last few moments in the last episode that sort of got us to the last few moments of this episode. Clearly, he had been screwing with her mind for a long time, maybe even prior to what we saw, but certainly during those 13 days. She was just wallowing in her in her sorrow, in clearly deep depression from not just having Oliver taken from her, but having Oliver return and then taken from her again. And that clearly was a big blow to her, and she has not been able to recover. And the Shadow King has taken advantage of that. And she is now in a state of not really knowing what is real and what isn't. She had a conversation with Sid and even carries the girl that comes out of him, that may or may not have actually happened. Like, none of those interactions may have happened at all. And it was just sort of her either being manipulated by the Shadow King, or that being a result of the manipulation married with the terrible mindset that she's in as a result of the things that she's been experiencing. So all of that led to her sort of being this Trojan horse, now being manipulated, and also kind of a spy as well, letting the Shadow King know what David is doing. He's like, she told him about some sort of note, providing the Shadow King information about what's going on in District 3, which in Division 3, which is important because it does explain, I guess, partly why the Shadow King was able to get into the division early on in the season. I believe in part because he's got a woman on the inside, essentially. Anyway, I'm glad that they're using Melanie for this purpose in this season, and it does justify why she's been absent from a lot of the season. And it's just interesting because, like, you develop a show like this, right? So they developed the first season, they had all the characters that they needed to tell their story, and then you go into another season, and then you're telling an extension of that story, but really a whole different story. That's what's really being told here. And sometimes you just don't need all the characters that you had the first season, right? Like, Melanie was intricate in helping David to realize that, first of all, the Shadow King was inside of him, and second, how to sort of figure out how to get rid of him. And that all played out, and then now we're in the second season, and of course, like, her purpose wasn't really necessary, but now we're seeing she's got a new purpose, her being, again, a sort of Trojan horse / spy. So cool. Maybe it's because the actress, I believe her name is Jean Smart. Maybe not. You can let me know, or not. She might have had other responsibilities, and maybe that's why they sidelined her. But I think it might have been more to serve the purposes of the narrative, which I totally get. Anyway, hopefully she'll, clearly she's going to play a role in these next few episodes. So let's see what happens. I predict maybe that she'll be dead by the end of the season. We'll see if that's the case, but I predict somebody's going to die. And we'll see who it is. Maybe it's going to be Melanie. Maybe Oliver as well. I don't know, but clearly a lot is going to happen. But in this episode, not much happened. Very much a bridge. Again, it kind of got us back to the last moment of the last episode, which is a very bold thing for a show to do, right? We're not really going to do anything. We're just going to kind of tell you a little bit more about what happened before so that you understand what's going to come. And I'm comfortable with that. And that's why I feel like this show, unless you're a hardcore fan like I am, then it's better suited to be binge, because this is the kind of thing that could really, I think, turn people off to this kind of show. On top of the fact that it's already sort of pretty trippy and layered in meaning that requires a lot of sort of in-depth analysis to truly get a grasp of what's going on. If you're not the sort to really dive into that, then it can really kind of just turn you off. And that's why, again, hopefully, I haven't said anything about a season 3. I looked online. I haven't seen anything about a season 3 yet, so I'm hoping that the nature of the show is not such that it just isn't able to find its audience. But if it isn't, and FX happens to cancel it, please. Actually, no, they won't. Because this is a collaboration with Marvel Television. Maybe they'll just throw it on Netflix, or maybe they'll throw it on Disney's new streaming service. which is coming up in the next year. I don't know. Legion, do not go away. Anyway, back to the show. Again, not much happened, but we did get that exploration of Melanie and her experience, and then we got the Lenny post her escape. You want to assume that she was going to just simply get to work to do whatever it is David had planned for her, but clearly she had other ideas. She went back to her old life, attempted to kind of reconnect with her old druggie gang, and that was interesting. But in those moments, we also, as the audience, were revealed that David's sister is potentially still in her. Unless that was David fucking with her mind, which is possible. But it also might mean that David's sister is still in there somewhere, and there might be a way to take David's sister out, but maybe not. But regardless, it allows for the actress to remain on the show, which is good. At least for this season. And anyway, even though a lot of what happened with Lenny and her little druggy world was sort of surreal and more of kind of like, let's represent a drug trip type of scenario, which again was not the astral plane. It was just very much her living within her environment, but us seeing through her mind things that weren't necessarily there. Not necessarily her in the astral plane, but her having, again, delusions about things. Again, the sister and just sort of the trippy nature of the experience of her kind of having these two minds within a drugged out kind of experience, which was interesting to see. On top of the fact that the environment was really cool. If you saw the room was had this really cool, kind of like large pixelated, colorful eye on one wall. I love how much care they put into the sets. I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm sure you've noticed, but like on top of everything else, the storytelling, the direction, and there was a lot of that like kind of paneling of the frame, much like in comic books, this episode as well, which I really loved. On top of all that, the visual design of the environment is all very sort of modern and evocative of elements which are sort of reminiscent of sort of a transcendental experience, something that's not necessarily rooted in reality. Elements of otherworldliness woven into the environments to really amplify the weird fucking quality of the show, which is ultimately what they're always trying to go for. And they did a good job here. But ultimately, all of that was meant to kind of link what was going on with Carrie and the chick with Lenny, and putting together the sequence of events that ultimately allows Lenny to get to the desert. Now, we had that interesting moment where Lenny finally realizes, oh shit, the car's right outside my door, because that's where that blue electric octopus is that she kept seeing. And when she gets in the car teleports to the desert. Is David able to teleport people? Because if so, fucking his powers just keep growing exponentially. But that's really something that we knew from the comics. Like David, the way he was represented in the comics was that he had multiple personalities, and each personality had its own different power. And so he somehow is able to wield a lot of them. Maybe what happened the last episode, or maybe his experience having the Shadow King in him and then having the Shadow King ripped out of him allowed him to be a unified being to some extent and have complete control of all these different powers that his different personalities might have. I don't know. Obviously, none of this is being explained in the show, which is fine. I don't need it to be explained, but it's interesting. David can teleport a car from one geographic location to another that appears to be very far away. Fascinating. And again, a sign of the magnitude of David's power, which again is a is a motif, a reoccurring sort of element of the season to emphasize the degree of a threat that David could be if indeed he is the one that's going to cause this apocalypse or whatever. Which again, we have yet to see play out. A lot is going to happen these next two episodes. So anybody that's like on the fence and you're just like, I don't know about this show, it's like going in a lot of weird directions. These last 2 episodes should really kind of bring everything together. The show is not one to kind of lead you down paths and not take you down that final hallway to the grand conclusion of whatever all the threads that were being sown are ultimately converging to. So we should be getting that. And of course it's going to leave things open because I'm sure they're planning for more, even if right now it's uncertain whether there will be more. But I'm sure there will be more because why not? Fuck. God, I'm just being optimistic right now. But anyway, I have a good feeling about where the season will end. And I have a good feeling that we're all going to be very satisfied by the end of it. But nonetheless, of course, this episode was very much just a piece of a bigger puzzle. And anyway, a couple interesting elements to mention. The moment that Lenny gets to the desert and first of all, the car blows up, just catches fire, which is an interesting side effect of the teleportation that David was able to happen with his geographic location being significantly different than where everybody else where she started and then she ended at. So that's kind of crazy. But anyway, another crazy thing was when Lenny gets out of the car, she sees like a circle of people wearing blue, and they're wearing boxes on their heads. And then there was like this pink kind of like large teacup-esque thing next to them. My interpretation of that is that whatever that was, it was somehow related to the monk order, and it was what is causing the nature of the reality in that desert to be shifting. Where again, last episode we were told that space and time are not working normally in that environment, and so maybe that they are the ones causing it. I don't know, folks. I'm just trying to interpret things to the best of my capacity, given again we don't have a lot of information and we keep seeing a lot of weird shit. Anyway, beyond that point, we got finally again back to where we started from, where we ended on the last episode, where again Melanie is knocking out the burned dude, and then ultimately in her mind reuniting with Oliver. I don't know, but we also saw that kind of Minotaur-esque creature at some point behind Lenny, and that's something we saw at the end of the last episode, which I thought would be explained this episode, but it wasn't. It's fine. We still have some time. But maybe that thing is going to play a role, or maybe Melanie's going to turn into that, or who knows? I don't know, man. I don't know anything. All I know is that we have 2 episodes left, and the season is it's satisfying. And I think, like I said last week, and maybe I've said before, like it's going to be a very satisfying binge this season, because once all the pieces are laid, to kind of watch them all in like 1 or 2 sittings, I think it'll really like come together as like a unified story with all the elements kind of like being set up and then having them play out in the way that they were intended to play out, so that they all kind of converge on whatever's going to happen in the next 2 episodes. I don't know, but I'm still loving the show, folks. And it's bittersweet that we're coming to an end. I want to know what's going to happen. I want to know where this is all going, as do you. And we're going to find out. But then once we do, shit, the season ends. Is the show going to be renewed? I hope so. If it doesn't, fuck, no more Legion. But I just read something on CBR, Comic Book Resources, that The Gifted is currently casting New Mutants for season 2. So we have that coming up. Season 2 of The Gifted is coming up next fall, and you know there's going to be a lot of really cool shit happening in that episode, in that second season, because now they've gotten their stride. They know that people like what they're doing, and they are 1,000% diving headfirst into the X-Men canon in their own way, but nonetheless, like, bringing a lot of interesting characters to life that I never thought I'd see. And so I look forward to seeing where all that's going to go, because it's going to be fucking awesome. Deadpool 2, I did my review. It's up right now. Check that out if you haven't seen it. Half liked it, half didn't. Liked it as a Deadpool film, didn't like it as a X-Men film. Didn't like the simplified representation of Cable, even though Cable is a difficult character to bring to life in a 2-hour movie that's not about him. But hopefully they'll explore more of Cable in the X-Force film that's rumored to be happening. We also have the Dark Phoenix film coming out, and something that's been noted several times over the last few weeks is that they have taken X-Men out of the title for that movie. It is just called Dark Phoenix, and they have a circle with an X. They have a circle around the X on the Phoenix, the last letter of the word Phoenix, to signify that it is an X-Men film. But that, to me, is a very clear sign that Marvel is getting these characters back, that these films that we're seeing are the last films of the Fox franchise. They're going to reboot the whole thing. They're going to bring the X-Men into the cinematic universe, and they are finally going to do them justice. So I'm really excited about that. Is Dark Phoenix going to be good? I don't fucking know. I don't know. I'm not optimistic about it whatsoever. See that back there? That's fucking Dark Phoenix. You want to do a Dark Phoenix? Do that. Do that. It's been done in the comics. It's been done in the cartoon. It's been done in that statue right there. By the way, that's a Bowen Design statue. It's gorgeous, isn't it? Anyway, hopefully the movie's all right, but whatever. If they ruin it, they ruin it. And eventually, ideally, Marvel will actually do the Dark Phoenix the right way. You know, several movie arc where you have the Phoenix Saga and then you have the Dark Phoenix Saga. Hopefully that will happen. Anyway, I am totally getting sidetracked because, again, this show, Legion, is something special and is always going to, I think, have a special place in X-Men canon outside of the comic books for its unique nature and for the fact that it was willing to just focus on Legion and the Shadow King as sort of the main characters in a multi-season, several series of arcs, which is something that I never thought I would see. And I'm so happy to finally get something like this, a representation of the Shadow King and a live action television show that not only gives reverence to the actual X-Men sort of, pocket universe that Legion kind of exists in, but also does it in a way that's like super interesting and artistic and just unique as a work of art, independent of its source material, which is just wonderful. I'm really happy about that, and I hope you guys are as well. Anyway, that's the end of my little stream of consciousness sort of review, reaction / rant in a positive way on the latest episode of Legion. 2 more episodes, folks. Next week we will talk about episode 10. Until then, if you haven't already done so, you can subscribe to my channel by clicking on that little button below the screen there. It'll help you keep up with my videos. And also, if you like the video, you can click a like. And if you don't like the video, click a don't like, because it's good to express yourself. You know what I mean? And as always, I'd like to remind you that if you haven't already, and you have a box, and you can put a check in it, I would avoid putting a check in it, and I would put an X in it, because ain't nobody checking me. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.